Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Mark, do you recognize me? I've actually become a real girl. It's funny how a life can pivot on a single, quiet moment. Mine didn't happen in a crowded room or during a dramatic confrontation. It happened in my bedroom, with the door locked and the only light coming from the cheap desk lamp I'd had since college. The hum of the city outside was a distant murmur, completely disconnected from the earthquake about to happen inside me. For months, the small, nondescript bottle had been my secret. It sat hidden in the back of my sock drawer, a tiny glass vessel containing a single, pearlescent pill. I'd found it through a dozen encrypted forums and back-alley websites, a place where people like me, people living in the wrong skin, whispered about impossible science. Complete biological gender realignment, the ad had claimed, with a list of disclaimers longer than the supposed list of ingredients. Everyone said it was a scam, a hoax, a dangerous cocktail of hormones and hope that would probably just land you in the emergency room. But I was desperate. Every morning, looking in the mirror was an act of quiet violence. The reflection of Carl with his sharp jaw, his broad shoulders, the faint stubble that always seemed to be there no matter how closely I shaved was a stranger. A well-meaning warden, but a warden nonetheless. The real me, the person I felt in my bones, was someone else entirely. Her name was Carla, and I had been dreaming of her my whole life. So I had the pill, and tonight was the night. My roommate, Mark, was out with friends from the auto repair shop where we both worked. He wouldn't be back for hours. It was now or never. My hand trembled as I unscrewed the cap. The pill was smooth and cool against my palm. I stared at it. A tiny moon holding an entire galaxy of possibilities. What if it was poison? What if it did nothing? What if it worked? That last thought was the most terrifying of all. With a deep, shuddering breath, I tossed the pill into my mouth and swallowed it with a glass of water. For a long moment, nothing happened. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, feeling foolish. Of course, it was a scam. I'd just swallowed an expensive sugar pill and worked myself into a panic over nothing. Then, a warmth started in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't unpleasant. It felt like a sip of hot tea spreading through my veins, a gentle radiating heat that seemed to seep into my very cells. I lay back on my pillows, watching the dust motes dance in the cone of light from my lamp. The warmth moved upward, coiling around my spine. It felt cleansing. A deep-seated tension I didn't even know I was carrying began to melt away. My skin started to prickle, a pins and needles sensation that swept over my entire body. I looked down at my hands. The skin seemed to be softening before my eyes, the pores shrinking, the faint calluses on my palms smoothing out. It was subtle, like watching a flower bloom in time-lapse. My whole body felt like it was humming, vibrating at a frequency I'd never felt before. Then came the first jolt. A sharp, electric pang shot through my chest. I gasped, pressing a hand to my sternum. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was more like a feeling of intense growth, of tissue stretching and reforming. I watched, breathless and terrified, as my flat, muscular chest began to change. Two small, sensitive mounds started to push outward, aching with a profound tenderness. I gripped the edge of my mattress, my knuckles turning white, as my pectoral muscles seemed to dissolve and reshape into something soft, something full. The ache intensified, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out, not from pain, but from sheer, overwhelming shock. My hair was the next thing I noticed. It began to feel heavy against my neck. I reached up and my fingers, which now looked more slender than they had moments ago, brushed against soft strands that hadn't been there before. I watched, mesmerized, as my short, practical haircut began to lengthen. It was impossible, like a film special effect happening in real time. The dark brown locks cascaded down, past my ears, tickling my shoulders, then tumbling down my back until they pooled around me on the bedsheets. It was softer than any hair I had ever touched. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I closed my eyes. The changes were accelerating. My shoulders felt like they were narrowing, pulling inward, while my waist cinched, creating a curve I'd only ever dreamed of. My hips broadened, a deep settling ache in my pelvis as my bones seemed to shift and widen. The rough denim of my jeans felt suddenly tight and abrasive against my thighs, which were softening, losing their hard, corded muscle and gaining a smooth, rounded shape. The most jarring sensation was in my throat. I tried to swallow, and a strangled, high-pitched sound escaped, my Adam's apple. That hated little bump I'd always tried to hide with collared shirts felt like it was dissolving. My throat tightened, and when I tried to clear it, the sound that came out was not Carl's familiar baritone. It was a clear, lighter tone. I tried again. "Hello," I whispered. The voice was breathy, melodic. It was a woman's voice. It was my voice. Tears started to stream down my face, hot and silent. I swung my new, graceful legs off the bed, my movements feeling strangely fluid and unfamiliar. I stumbled to the full-length mirror leaning against the wall, a mirror I usually avoided like the plague. For a second, I was afraid to look, afraid that the reflection would still be Carl, that this was all just some elaborate hallucination. Slowly, I lifted my eyes. The person staring back at me wasn't a stranger. It was the woman I had seen in my dreams my entire life. She was naked, vulnerable, and haloed by the soft lamplight. Her body was soft and curved in all the right places. Small, perfect breasts adorned her chest. Her waist tapered elegantly, flaring out to beautifully rounded hips. Her legs were long and smooth. I raised a trembling hand to my face. My jaw was softer, my cheeks fuller, my lips plump and pink. My eyes, which had always seemed dull and sad, now looked large and luminous, framed by thick, dark lashes. This wasn't a transformation. It wasn't a change. It was a correction. It was the feeling of a dislocated joint finally snapping back into place. Every cell in my body, every beat of my heart, hummed with a single, undeniable truth: this is right, this is me. A sob of pure, unadulterated relief escaped my lips. I fell to my knees, a weeping mess of joy and disbelief. I had spent 26 years feeling like a ghost in my own life, and in the space of 30 minutes, I had finally been born. I was Carla. I was real. It was in that moment, lost in my own reflection, that I heard the sound of a key in the front door. My blood ran cold. Mark, he was home early. Panic seized me. I was completely naked. My old clothes were in a heap on the floor, and they wouldn't fit this new body anyway. My mind raced, but I was frozen, trapped between the mirror and the bed. The front door opened and closed. I could hear his familiar footsteps in the living room, the clink of his keys on the entryway table. "Carl, you home?" he called out. I couldn't answer. My new voice would only confuse him, terrify him. I stayed silent, praying he would just go to his own room. But the footsteps got closer. He was coming down the hall. He was coming to my room. The doorknob rattled, locked, thank God. "Hey, you okay in there?" Mark's voice was muffled through the wood. "You're quiet tonight." My heart was going to beat its way out of my new chest. I had to say something. I had to do something. But what? My frantic eyes darted around the room and landed on nothing that could help. "Carl, I'm not kidding. Open the door," he said, his tone shifting from casual to concerned. I heard a jiggle, then the sharp, metallic click of him using the emergency key he kept on his keychain for lockouts. The door swung open. Mark stood in the doorway, his work jacket slung over his shoulder, a six-pack of beer in his other hand. His eyes widened, the beer forgotten. It slipped from his grasp and crashed to the floor, amber liquid and broken glass exploding across the hardwood. He just stared, his face a mask of pure shock and confusion. He was looking at a strange but naked woman standing in his roommate's bedroom. His mouth opened, and a strangled noise came out. He looked like he was about to scream. I had to stop him. I had to make him understand. I took a shaky step forward, raising my hands in a placating gesture. My voice, when it finally came, was a desperate, trembling whisper. "Mark, don't scream. It's me, Carla. I swear you still know me. It's just, my body has changed." Mark stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. His brain was clearly struggling to process the scene: the naked woman with Carl's eyes, the broken beer bottles at his feet, and the impossible words that had just come out of my mouth in a voice that was both alien and somehow familiar. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of beer onto the floor. "What?" he finally managed to stammer, his voice barely a whisper. "Who are you? What did you do to Carl?" My heart sank. Of course, this was the logical conclusion. He thought I was an intruder, a threat. Tears welled in my eyes again, this time not from joy but from sheer terror. I'd been so wrapped up in my own personal miracle that I hadn't thought about how it would look to anyone else. To him, I was a stranger who had somehow replaced his best friend. "No, Mark. Please," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "It's me, it's Carl. I'm Carla now, the pill, the one I told you about, the one you said was crazy. It worked." I gestured wildly at my body, at my face, at the long hair tumbling over my shoulders. He followed my movements, his gaze cataloging every curve, every soft line that shouldn't have been there. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He knew about my secret orders, my late-night forum browsing. He'd always dismissed it as a harmless fantasy, a way for me to cope. He never, not in a million years, thought it was real. But he also knew me. He had known me since we were kids, wrenching on old cars in his dad's garage. He saw the panic in my eyes, the same panic he'd seen when I'd crashed my first bike, or when I'd faced down my father about not wanting to join the family business. He saw me in there, somewhere beneath the female form. His expression slowly shifted from shock to something softer, more bewildered. He took a hesitant step into the room, carefully avoiding the broken glass. "Carl," he whispered again, this time as a question, not an accusation. I nodded frantically, sobbing openly now. "Yes, it's me, I swear." He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides. He didn't touch me, but he stood close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. He looked deep into my eyes, searching. After a lifetime of friendship, he was looking for a sign, a glimmer of the person he knew, and he found it. "Okay," he breathed out, his own shoulders slumping in relief or resignation. I couldn't tell. "Okay, just breathe. I believe you. Let me help." He turned and grabbed the thick, fleece-lined jacket he'd dropped and gently draped it over my bare shoulders. The rough fabric felt strange against my newly sensitive skin, but the weight of it was grounding. It was a simple, kind gesture, and it broke through my panic like a ray of sunlight. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the jacket closed. It smelled faintly of motor oil and Mark, a scent that was suddenly powerfully reassuring. "You look," he started, then trailed off, shaking his head as if to clear it. He ran a hand through his own short, messy hair. "You look happier than I've ever seen you." That one sentence hit me harder than the entire physical transformation. He didn't say I looked weird or different or like a monster. He saw my happiness. The tears started again, but this time they were quiet tears of gratitude. All those years of hiding, of feeling wrong, and the first thing my best friend notices is that I finally look happy. As the initial adrenaline faded, a new wave of sensations began to register. The body I was in felt foreign. When I took a step, my hips moved with a natural sway I couldn't control. The long hair kept tickling the back of my neck and my shoulders, sending little shivers down my spine. The air in the room felt different on my skin, which was so much softer, more porous. It was like I'd been wearing a thick leather suit my whole life and it had just been peeled away, leaving every nerve ending exposed to the world. Even the subtle pressure from my new breast was a constant, gentle reminder of the change, not uncomfortable, just all present. Mark seemed to notice my disorientation. "You need clothes," he said, his voice practical and steady, cutting through my daze, something more comfortable than my jacket. I tried to grab one of Carl's old t-shirts from a drawer, but it hung off my now narrower shoulders like a sack. Mark just shook his head. "That's not going to work anymore," he said gently. "What about that bag, the one you keep hidden under your bed?" My face flushed with a heat that had nothing to do with the transformation. He knew about that, too. The bag held my deepest secrets, a few carefully chosen articles of women's clothing I'd bought online over the years. Items I'd only ever dared to wear in the dead of night. When I was completely alone, I'd never imagined another person, let alone Mark, would ever see them on me. But he was right. I had nothing else. With trembling hands, I pulled the worn canvas bag from under the bed frame and unzipped it. Inside were the pieces of a dream I never thought would come true: a simple A-line skirt, a soft cotton blouse, and, tucked away at the bottom, a set of plain black lingerie. Mark tactfully turned his back. "I'll, go clean up the beer," he mumbled, giving me my privacy. My hands shook so badly I could barely manage the clasps. I picked up the bra first. It felt flimsy and impossibly complicated. After a few clumsy attempts, I finally managed to work the hooks on the back, my fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar mechanism. The straps settled on my shoulders, and the soft cups cradled my new breasts. The feeling was indescribable. It was a sense of containment, of support, of rightness. It made them feel real, a part of me, not just some strange new additions. Next came the panties, a simple piece of soft, stretchy cotton. They slid over my smooth hips easily, the fabric feeling light as a feather against my skin. Compared to the rough, restrictive men's underwear I was used to, this felt like freedom. Finally, I pulled the simple, navy blue A-line skirt over my hips and buttoned the soft, white blouse. I stood there for a moment, letting the feel of the clothes sink in. The skirt swished gently around my knees with a sound I'd only ever heard, never experienced. The weight of the fabric against my legs was a delicate, constant touch. When I looked in the mirror this time, I wasn't a naked, shocked creature. I was a woman, dressed real. The heavy weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders for a lifetime felt like it had finally been lifted. When Mark came back in with a dustpan, he stopped short in the doorway. He looked at me, really looked at me, in the clothes that fit my new body. His eyes were wide again, but the shock was replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't pity or disgust. It was bog-eared appreciation, mixed with a healthy dose of awkwardness. "Wow," he said softly. My happiness was quickly followed by a tidal wave of fear. This was real. This wasn't a dream I could wake up from. What was I going to do? What about my job, my driver's license, my parents? They were conservative, traditional people who still thought my decision not to get a crew cut was a rebellious phase. How could I ever explain this to them? "What have I done?" I whispered, sinking onto the bed, the reality of my new life crashing down on me. Mark put the dustpan down and came to sit beside me, leaving a careful, respectful distance between us. He didn't say, "It's going to be okay," or any of the other empty platitudes. He just sat with me in the silence for a moment. Then he gently placed a hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm and solid. "From now on," he said, his voice low and certain, "you don't go through this alone. Whatever comes next, I'm with you." Waking up was a disorienting experience. For a fleeting second, trapped in the groggy space between sleep and consciousness, I was still Carl. My mind expected the familiar weight and shape of my old body. But as I shifted, the sensation was all wrong. My body felt light, pliant, and incredibly soft against the bed sheets. My long hair was a silken weight spread across the pillow, and a few strands had fallen across my face. Tickling my nose, I opened my eyes and saw the gentle slope of my own breasts under the thin fabric of the old t-shirt I'd borrowed from Mark to sleep in. It wasn't a dream. A slow smile spread across my face. It felt real. The fear and panic of last night had receded with sleep, replaced by a quiet, profound sense of peace. I stretched, a full-body, cat-like stretch that felt entirely new. My limbs were more flexible, my back arching in a way it never had before. Every small movement was a discovery, a little piece of a puzzle I was joyfully putting together. I could smell coffee brewing. The rich, dark aroma pulled me out of bed. As I stood, the oversized shirt fell to my mid-thigh, and the cool morning air on my bare legs made me shiver. I walked into the living room, my bare feet silent on the wooden floor, my hips swaying with that same unconscious rhythm as last night. Mark was in the kitchen, his back to me, scooping coffee grounds into the filter. He was already dressed in his work jeans and a grease-stained t-shirt. He turned as I entered, a half smile on his face that faltered slightly when he saw me. He did a quick double-take, as if he needed to remind himself that the woman with the bedhead and sleepy eyes was really me. "Morning," he said, his voice a little rougher than usual. I smiled, feeling a little shy under his gaze. "Good morning." He visibly relaxed when I spoke. It was my voice, my new voice, that seemed to seal the reality for him. He handed me a mug of steaming black coffee. Our fingers brushed as I took it, and the fleeting contact sent a strange little jolt through me. My skin felt hyper-aware of his touch. He leaned against the counter, sipping his own coffee, and studied me over the rim of his mug. "So, how does it feel?" he asked, his tone genuinely curious. "It feels..." I paused, searching for the right word. Right, like I've been wearing shoes on the wrong feet my entire life and I just now put them on correctly. Everything is quiet inside. He nodded slowly, accepting that, but then his face grew more serious. "We need to talk about the practical stuff, Carla." Hearing him use my name so naturally sent a warm thrill through me. It was the first time anyone had ever said it out loud to me. I sat down at our small kitchen table, suddenly feeling the weight of the world settling back onto my shoulders. "I know," I said quietly. "My job, my driver's license, my family." The last word came out as a choked whisper. Mark sat down across from me, his expression softening. "One thing at a time," he said, his voice calm and methodical, just like when he was explaining a complicated engine repair. "First, the legal stuff, changing your name, your gender marker on your ID. It's a process, but it's doable. I'll help you look up the forms today. We can figure it out." I nodded, feeling a little bit of the panic ease. He made it sound like a checklist, a task to be completed, not an insurmountable mountain. "But the job," I sighed, looking down at my hands wrapped around the warm mug. They were so different now, slender fingers, smooth skin, nails that looked naturally manicured. "The garage is... It's a tough place. Mark, they're not exactly the most open-minded crew. I can't just walk in there like this." "You won't have to face them alone," he said firmly. "Every step of the way. I'll be right there with you." His loyalty was a shield, and I felt my resolve harden. He was right. I couldn't hide forever. This was my life now. After breakfast, the day took on a surreal, almost playful quality. We decided that before tackling the mountain of paperwork, I needed to learn some of the basics, and that, according to Mark, started with makeup. He'd sheepishly admitted to watching a few online tutorials after I'd fallen asleep, just to get the basics. He brought out a small makeup kit I'd bought years ago and never had the courage to open. We sat on the floor of the living room, the morning sun streaming through the windows as he awkwardly tried to guide me. "Okay, so this is foundation," he said, holding up the little bottle like it was a foreign artifact. "The lady in the video said to just put a little on and blend it. It's supposed to even out your skin." I dabbed a tiny amount on my fingertips. The liquid was cool and silky. As I smoothed it over my cheeks and forehead, I watched in the little compact mirror as my already clear complexion became flawless. Like porcelain, I couldn't stop staring. Next was mascara. My hand was unsteady, and I nearly poked myself in the eye. Mark chuckled. "Easy does it." He gently took my hand to steady it. His calloused, mechanic's fingers were a stark contrast to my own, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. With his help, I carefully brushed the wand over my lashes. The effect was instantaneous. My eyes, already large, seemed to pop. They looked deeper, more defined, and undeniably, shockingly feminine. Last was a sheer, pinkish lip tint. I swiped it on, and my lips, already fuller than they had been, took on a healthy, glossy sheen. Mark had gone quiet. I looked up at him, a questioning look on my face. He swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on my mouth for a second too long before he quickly looked away, a faint blush creeping up his neck. It really makes a difference," he stammered. I looked at my reflection. It was still me, but a version of me that looked polished, put together, confident. I couldn't help the huge, brilliant smile that spread across my face. It was the first time I had ever smiled at my own reflection and truly meant it. This face was mine. This happiness was mine. And standing, or rather, Sitting right beside me was the best friend a girl could ever ask for. "Okay," Mark announced after I'd spent at least 10 minutes just admiring my own eyes in the mirror. "Phase 2 Operation Wardrobe. You can't live in my old t-shirts and that one skirt forever." The thought of going out in public sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. Out there, I wouldn't have the safety of our apartment. I'd be exposed, subject to stares and judgments. "I don't know, Mark. Am I ready?" He looked at me, a soft, encouraging smile on his face. "You look amazing, Carla. No one's going to think twice." He grabbed a light cardigan from the hook by the door, another item from my secret bag, and draped it over my shoulders. "We'll go to the mall out by the suburbs. It's quieter, and I'll be right with you." He held out his hand. "Come on." His confidence was contagious. I took a deep breath, slipped on a pair of simple flats I'd bought, and took his hand. His grasp was firm and reassuring. As we walked out of our apartment building and into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt like I was stepping onto a new planet. Every sensation was amplified. The breeze felt different as it lifted the hem of my skirt and played with the long strands of my hair. The rhythm of my own steps was new, my hips swaying gently as I walked. I was acutely aware of my own form, of the space my body took up in the world. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I couldn't help but notice the looks from people we passed on the street. It wasn't hostile, mostly just fleeting, curious glances. A few men let their eyes linger a little too long. A look of casual appreciation that was completely foreign to me. It made my cheeks burn, and I instinctively moved a little closer to Mark. He seemed to sense my discomfort, because he gently squeezed my hand and steered me toward the mall entrance. "Just ignore them," he murmured, his voice low. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." The mall was a cavern of bright lights, soft music, and the low hum of hundreds of conversations. It was overwhelming. But as we stepped into the first department store, something shifted. We were surrounded by racks of colorful clothes. The air smelled faintly of perfume, and the sales associates bustled about, offering friendly smiles. One of them, a chic woman with a short, stylish haircut, caught my eye. "Welcome, let me know if you two need any help finding anything," she said, her gaze including both of us without a hint of suspicion. She saw me. She saw a woman. Not a man in a disguise, not a joke, but a woman shopping with her friend, or boyfriend, or husband. The validation was so powerful I felt lightheaded. We spent the next 2 hours in a blissful, dizzying whirlwind. Mark, to my surprise, had a surprisingly good eye. He'd pull a dress off a rack and say, "This color would look great on you," or hold up a pair of well-fitting jeans and insist, "Every girl needs a good pair of these." The real trial came in the fitting room. The first item I tried on was a simple, wrap-style sundress in a soft floral pattern. I pulled it on and turned to face the three-way mirror. For the first time, I saw my full silhouette clearly. The dress cinched at my new, narrow waist and flared out over my hips, accentuating a classic hourglass figure I never knew I had. My legs looked long and shapely. I felt pretty, genuinely, truly pretty. I stepped out to show Mark. He was leaning against the opposite wall, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as the door opened, and his mouth literally fell open. He straightened up, his phone completely forgotten. "Carla," he breathed, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "You are genuinely beautiful." My heart did a stuttering leap in my chest. It wasn't just a compliment, it was the way he said it. With such raw, unedited sincerity, it was like he was seeing me, the real me, for the very first time. I felt a blush spread from my neck all the way to the tips of my ears. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. We fell into a comfortable rhythm after that. I'd try something on. He'd give me an honest opinion. A soft cashmere sweater made my skin tingle with its luxuriousness. A sleek pair of black trousers made me feel powerful and professional. Then came the lingerie section. I was hesitant, but Mark just shrugged. "You need the right foundation for the new architecture." "Right," he joked, though his cheeks were a little pink. I picked out a few delicate sets made of silk and lace. In the privacy of the fitting room, I tried on a matching bra and panty set in a deep emerald green. The lace was soft and intricate against my skin, far more sensual than the plain cotton I had worn that morning. Looking at my reflection, at the way the delicate fabric highlighted the curves of my breasts and hips, I felt a spark of something new confidence, a quiet, simmering sense of my own femininity and attractiveness. It was a heady feeling. The final challenge was shoes. I was drawn to a pair of stylish but modest heels. I have no idea how to walk in these, I confessed to Mark. Only one way to find out, he said with a grin. I slipped them on, the slight elevation changing my posture immediately, making my back arch slightly and pushing my hips forward. I took one wobbly step, then another, and then my ankle gave way. I yelped, pitching forward, straight into Mark. His hand shot out instinctively to steady me, one landing on my arm, the other pressing firmly against the small of my back. The world seemed to stop for a second. I was flush against him, his solid chest a wall against my front. His hand on my back was a point of intense heat. His fingers splayed against the thin fabric of my blouse. I could feel the hard muscle of his arm, smell the faint, clean scent of his soap, my breath caught in my throat. I looked up at him. His eyes were wide, and he was looking down at me with an intensity that made my stomach flutter. "Thanks for the catch," I stammered, my face burning. He seemed to snap out of a trance, quickly pulling his hands away as if he'd been burned. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "No, it's okay," I interrupted, maybe a little too quickly. I liked it." The air between us crackled with a new, unspoken tension. We both looked away at the same time, a silent agreement to let the moment pass. But it didn't pass. It hung there, a new piece of the puzzle of who we were to each other now. We left the mall with bags full of clothes, a complete wardrobe for a new life. As Mark loaded them into the trunk of his car, I felt a sense of pure, unadulterated euphoria for the first time. I wasn't just wearing a costume, I was building a life. I was becoming Carla, inside and out. Back at the apartment, the energy was light and giddy. We ordered pizza, and while we waited, I couldn't resist trying on my new things. The living room became my personal runway. I'd disappear into my bedroom and emerge a minute later in a new outfit, twirling for Mark's approval. First, the dark wash jeans that fit like a second skin, paired with the soft cashmere sweater. "Comfortable and classic," he declared, giving me a thumbs up. Next, a professional-looking black dress that I thought might be perfect for job interviews. Should it come to that? "Wow, powerful," was his only comment, but his eyes said more. Then, just for fun, the floral sundress from the department store. When I walked out in that, he just shook his head and smiled. "That's the one," he said softly. "That's the one where I really saw you." The evening felt like a celebration, a happy domestic scene that was a world away from the panic and confusion of the night before. We sat on the sofa, eating pizza straight from the box, talking and laughing more easily than we had in years. I felt myself relaxing into this new skin, this new role. I crossed my legs naturally, tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, and gestured with my hands in a way that felt more fluid, more expressive. These weren't conscious choices, they were instincts, finally allowed to surface. After we ate, Mark cleared away the boxes while I sat on the couch, feeling wonderfully full and content. He came back with a laptop and a small stack of papers he'd printed out. His expression was gentle but serious. "Ready to tackle the boring stuff?" he asked. The mood shifted from celebratory to purposeful. This was the next step. This was making it real in the eyes of the world. Mark sat beside me, closer than he usually would, so we could both see the laptop screen. He smelled like soap and pizza, a comforting combination. He pulled up the official government websites for a legal name change and gender marker update. "Okay, so here's the petition for change of name," he said, pointing at the screen. "We just have to fill this out, get it notarized, and file it at the courthouse." I looked at the form, blank spaces for current legal name and proposed new name. Seeing it there in black and white made it incredibly real. Carl becomes Carla. It was a legal incantation, a formal declaration of the magic that had already happened. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the pen Mark offered me. He must have seen it, because he placed his hand over mine, his fingers warm and steady. "You're not dreaming," he said quietly, as if reading my mind. "This is you. This is real." With his hand still covering mine, I wrote my new name for the first time on an official document, Carla Jensen. A thrill shot through me. It was my name. It was me. We spent the next hour filling out forms, medical history updates, Social Security Administration requests, DMV applications. It was a mountain of bureaucratic red tape, but Mark navigated it with a patient, logical focus that was incredibly calming. He never once made me feel like this was a burden. He acted as if he were helping me with my taxes or assembling a piece of furniture, just something friends do for each other. As the evening wore on, the space between us on the sofa seemed to shrink. A comfortable silence settled over us as we worked. At one point, I leaned my head on his shoulder, feigning exhaustion from reading all the fine print. He stiffened for a second, then relaxed, letting me stay there. I could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solidness of his shoulder beneath my cheek. It felt safe. Later, while he was on the phone with his sister, I found myself studying him, his familiar face, the way his brow furrowed when he was concentrating, the easy smile that always reached his eyes. For years, he had been my anchor, the one person who saw past the facade I presented to the world. But now, looking at him through Carla's eyes, I saw something new. I saw not just a friend, but a man, a kind, strong, and unexpectedly gentle man who had accepted the impossible without hesitation and was now sitting on our worn-out sofa, fighting bureaucracy for me. A warm, unfamiliar feeling blossomed in my chest. It was more than just gratitude. It was something deeper, something more complicated and a little bit terrifying. Was it possible that in becoming myself, I was also beginning to see him in a completely new light? He hung up the phone and turned back to me, a tired but satisfied look on his face. "Okay, I think that's everything for tonight. The rest we have to do in person." "Mark," I said, my voice soft. "Thank you. I couldn't do any of this without you." He just smiled. "What are friends for?" But the way he looked at me, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than usual, made me wonder if he was starting to feel this shift between us, too. The line between Carl's best friend and Carla's something else was beginning to blur, and I found that I wasn't afraid of it at all. The next morning, I woke up feeling a sense of profound calm. There was no disorientation, no moment of confusion. I woke up, and I was simply Carla. It was as natural as breathing. The light streaming through my window felt like a welcome, not an intrusion. I slipped out of bed, my body moving with a newfound grace, and pulled on a pair of the soft yoga pants and a simple t-shirt we'd bought yesterday. The clothes fit perfectly, moving with me, not against me. In the kitchen, Mark had already made coffee. He handed me a mug with a knowing smile, and we sat at the table in a comfortable, domestic silence. The awkwardness of the past 2 days was gone, replaced by a new, easy rhythm. This was our new normal. Spread out on the table was the stack of paperwork from last night. There was one last form to sign the final declaration for the name change petition. I picked up the pen, my hand perfectly steady this time. I looked at the letterhead at the top of the page, where the name of the county court was printed in official, blocky letters. Then I looked at the signature line. I took a deep breath and signed my name with a flourish, Carla Jensen. Staring at my new signature, a wide, genuine grin spread across my face, and then a laugh bubbled up from my chest. It was a happy, unrestrained sound. It was done. The legal process had begun. Carl was officially a memory, and Carla was a legal fact in the making. "It feels good, doesn't it?" Mark said, his own smile mirroring mine. "It feels incredible," I replied, my voice ringing with joy. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." His words warmed me to my core, but as the morning wore on, one last, terrifying task loomed over me. A dark cloud in my otherwise bright blue sky, the garage, my job, my old life. I knew I couldn't put it off. I needed the job, and more than that, I needed to face this head on. I couldn't start my new life by running away from my old one. Mark must have sensed the shift in my mood. "You're thinking about Dave, aren't you?" he asked, referring to our boss, a gruff but fair man who ran the auto shop. I nodded, my stomach twisting into a knot. I have to call him. I can't just not show up, and I can't walk in there unannounced either. You want me to be there, he offered immediately. I considered it for a moment, then shook my head. No, this is something I have to do myself, but could you maybe just stay here while I make the call? Of course, he said, his expression serious and supportive. He came and stood behind my chair, placing his hands firmly on my shoulders. His touch was a silent promise I've got your back. My heart hammering, I picked up my phone. My contacts list was still full of Carl's life. I found the number for the garage and my thumb hovered over the call button. I was terrified. What would I even say? How do you explain an overnight, complete biological transformation to your 50-year-old, no-nonsense boss? Mark squeezed my shoulders gently, a silent signal of encouragement. I closed my eyes, took one final, fortifying breath, and pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice, then a familiar, gravelly voice answered. Milla's Auto? Dave speaking. My throat went dry. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Mark's hands tightened on my shoulders, grounding me. You can do this, his touch seemed to say. I swallowed hard and found my voice. It came out clear and steady, a woman's voice, my voice. Hi, Dave, it's Carla Jensen. I paused, letting the unfamiliar name hang in the air. I need to talk to you about coming back to work with my real identity. The line went completely silent. I could hear the faint clang of a wrench dropping in the background, the distant hiss of an air compressor. But from Dave, there was nothing. The silence stretched on, thick with disbelief and 1,000 unspoken questions. His response, whatever it would be the first real test of my new life. It would set the tone for everything that was to come. But I wasn't running anymore. I was no longer a ghost hiding in the wrong body. I had my body, my name, and my best friend standing right behind me. I was ready. Whatever he said next, I was ready to face it.